Hey everybody, it's John Wheatcroft here, bringing you another Sunday Q&A session. We're up to week 16, and we've got a bit of a chord melody theme going on today. So I'm going to be looking at three kind of related topics. One is about, as the name might suggest, deriving melody lines from within chord shapes and trying to see ways to combine the two, so we think kind of like a piano player in a way. The second one is going to be how you can spice up your blues playing by incorporating like little bits of chords, or in some cases actually full chord shapes, in between your lines to give you a greater sense of sophistication. And we're going to round things off with a kind of a sort of a lick that encapsulates many of the topics that we will have covered. So I'm going to give you a very sort of specific thing to learn based around these chord melody concepts. Now, last time I gave you a little bit of homework, so if you're looking at this for the first time, you might want to check out week 15, where we did a little introduction to chord melody. I gave you 5 examples based around a simple little lick-based 12-bar blues. We're going to look at the next 5 next week, so come back to me next week and you'll see examples 6 to 10 from that theme. So I haven't forgotten about that. It's just I think it'd be useful for you to have the information that we see today before you tackle those examples next week. So I hope you enjoy. Let's get stuck into, first off, we'll see this piece by Django Reinhardt. Okay. So that was Anouman by Django Reinhardt. I hope you enjoyed that. I tried my best to keep it simple there. I wanted to sort of capture a first take feel, so that's the first run through I've had of this today. So I'm going to leave it there, warts and all, just to see what an improvisation on this sounds like. But trying not to fall back upon too many sort of tricky things, trying to keep things as melodic as possible, but while still following the contour of the changes. So there's a lot of minor stuff happening there, and some of the chord melody ideas we're going to discuss a little bit later on today. But I hope you enjoyed that, and let's get stuck into the questions this week. One way we can look at chords on the guitar is to see each chord shape as having the potential to be surrounded by melodic material. Right? So, and every note within each chord shape has got that kind of characteristic as well, not just the highest notes, right? Which is often one of the things that traps that we fall back into when we approach chord melody. So we can do this with any note. So to begin with, let's start with the chord of A major 7. That's pretty typical voicing for an A major 7. So we have an A, skip a string, G sharp, C sharp, and an E. Okay. So each of those 4 notes can be seen as coming from various points in the associated A major scale, or if you prefer an A Lydian scale, or whatever scale we're considering that to come from. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is if you're thinking of a different scale, then you just think of different surround notes, really. But it's all valid. Okay, so on each string, on a string by string basis, I'll ask myself what melodic material exists. So on the B string, what if it was Lydian? If I was thinking more of a Lydian. So that means I can play the chord and break into melodic material. Or in reverse, play the melody line and then sort of position a chord underneath it. Okay. So that's what's available in the near vicinity on the B string. Okay. On the G string, we have so I can break away from the chord. In this case, the perfect 4th, or if I'm thinking Lydian, it could be a raised 4th. I'll keep to major scale for now. More bluesy type ideas there with dominant 7. Okay, so the D string, what I've got is, So all these melodic ideas are all surrounding that chord shape, okay, and they're like kind of one and the same. So that means that at any point when you play this chord, we can break out into these melodic lines. This can also work with functional harmony. So say, for example, we decide to go 5 to 1. All I have to ask myself is, okay, what melody notes are associated with this sound, and what melody notes are associated with this sound. Okay, so and this is the way that a lot of the kind of old school jazz players would play, that didn't necessarily, go to college or whatever and learn all the scales, but they could still play melodies to fit the chords, because they see what notes surround this chord, what notes surround this chord, can we connect them together? It means as well that you can think of the two things as entwined, and you can start embedding chord shapes into your lines, and you can start embedding melodies into your chords. The streak can go in both directions. Yeah. So let's do this as an exercise. So the B string, G string, the D string. So you've actually got the same note, the surround notes are different. Sense. So what I'm doing is I'm finding, so essentially what I'm in a nutshell, what I'm suggesting you do is anytime you play a chord, don't just leave it there, and you can do this with any chord. So say, for example, we'll come to this, I'll just off the top of my head, let's play an A13 flat 9. So you might learn that chord shape and you think, okay, that's great, that's useful, we can go what have you. But it's even more useful though if I know, okay, this chord shape is associated with this scale, half whole scale, and I can see that the scale gives me the chord. So on the top string I've got so up. These chord variations are all possible. On the next string I have, so then we have variations on chord. So I could change the chord to reflect the notes that are in the scale. Or at any point if I'm playing a melody, I can drop the chord underneath it. So I can put that into a line. So I can see all of those strong notes that I'm aiming for all relate to the harmony, they all relate to the chords. So just as a good thing to think about when you practice, try stuff like this. You know, when you play that chord, ask yourself, okay, what's the associated notes that go with that chord? And you can think of it as a scale if you like, or just think of it as like which notes sound good in that chord, which will give you a scale. So that line there is actually just those notes in the chord. So another way that we can approach this is kind of like the way you see players like Martin Taylor, which I think he's taken from like George Van Eps and those kind of guys, is instead of seeing the chord as a block, so say it with D major 7, you learn it as a block, and that's the way we often learn chords on the guitar, like they all happen at the same time. You might think of it as being like bass note, middle note, high notes. So low, middle, high. And each of those notes has got the potential to be the melodic interest, if you like. So naturally, we tend to think of it as being the highest note, but it doesn't need to be. The melody could be the lowest note. Or it could be the middle note. Or it could be the highest note. Kind of ideas, and that's kind of like a sort of a common exercise. I've seen many players play things similar to this. So in that case, what I did, I harmonized the scale, and this by no means am I claiming to have invented this particular exercise. This is sort of one I've seen doing the rounds in various different places. So we harmonize the scale: D major, E minor, F sharp, minor, G major. Okay. And we'll choose maybe the lowest note. And that becomes the melodic interest. Or the middle note. sense. So, but all of this stuff, it's all basically, the principle is around every chord that you see, you will see, you can find a sort of like a halo of notes in the scale that surround each chord. They live in the same location. And if you can see these notes, this is definitely going to help you when it comes to playing through chord changes. You know, definitely as the chords start moving really quickly, if you can begin to spot the connections with the chord shapes and then see how that relates to the melodies that surround them, that's going to put you in a really good place. So, have fun experimenting with these ideas. It's going to relate a little bit to the lick that we're going to play at the end, and it's also going to relate in parts to this chord melody section based around the blues, which is coming next. So I hope you get something from this. Next up, I'm going to show you a couple of cool things you can do to spice up your blues playing, or jazz blues playing. Kind of like there's a bit of a kind of a blurred line between those styles in some players. So what I'm going to do to begin with is show you a way how you can basically imply the chords or explicitly state the chords whilst playing lines that would be more sort of generic. You know, like one of the things that some players really struggle with is outlining the changes, so that when we go through, say, the 3 chords of a B flat blues, you know, we're going to keep this just 1 4 5 for today. B flat, the E flat, and the F. You might play the same scale over all 3. You know, the minor pentatonic or the blues scale. So essentially, the 3 scale choices that I'm going to be playing around with here are the minor pentatonic and the blues variation of it, the major pentatonic and the blues permutation for it, and then the minor pentatonic, which has got a 6th in it, which is kind of like the dominant pentatonic from the 4th degree. Those 3 sounds. Okay, but I'm going to imply the harmony by playing little bits of the chords at appropriate points. So say, I'll just do some generic blues phrasing with no kind of specific chord in mind. It could be any one of the 3. So which chord was that? Well, it could be the 1, could be the 4. I guess I kind of hinted at it being the 1 by playing the root note a few times. But I can be really explicit by playing little pieces of the chords. So, fortunately for us, those 3 chords are super connected. So a B flat 7, we can imply just by playing the root note, the flat 7, and the major 3rd. And in fact, we can even do away with the root note. Just play these 2 notes. So that's the 7th of the chord, that's the 3rd. Okay. When I go to E flat, what happens is the 7th and 3rd flip over in terms of that was the 7th, now it's the 3rd of E flat. So the functions flip, but the physical proximity is just 1 fret, you know, they're literally a fret apart. So there's the 1 chord, there's the 4 chord, and here's the 1 chord, and there's the 5 chord. So if I play kind of a declamatory kind of riff, so by just using those little bits of the chords, it's keeping me absolutely centered in the progression. Yeah, and you can miss them out. You know, if you wanted to play a longer phrase, you know, say you want to go. So that's spelling the chords out without having to necessarily, you know, embed, you know, clues in the lines, you know, like where you play Notes That Belong the bigger picture of the chords. We'll do that in a second, actually. So we can extend the chords. We could play bigger chords. So instead of it being just a third seventh, we can play like a 13 to a 9, 13 to a 9, perhaps. So this can lend a sort of a question and answer type of sophistication to your soloing. So if you play lines, sense. And of course, you don't have to restrict it to the blues. You know, you could do this if you're playing, something that's got functional harmony, standard or whatever. And it sounds really cool. It gives us the impression that that you're in control of every part of the music. You know, you could kind of go from playing a bass line, chords. All these things are all they're all going on, and you're just bringing out the sound of which element of the music you'd like. You find in certain solo guitar situations this is a real asset as well, because what will happen is, even though, say I play the rhythm, I'll stop playing rhythm. Didn't really stop, they're still happening, the harmony's still implied. So try this for size. Imagine, kind of, as I say, I tend to think of it a little bit like how I might imagine a big band to sound. You could BB King it. So you're sort of doing a melody line which is sort of harmonically nondescript, meaning it's not really adjusting the chords, but the chords fill that in for us. So that's definitely something that's really useful. You might want to check out how Osnoy does this kind of thing, where he kicks on a chorus pedal, really fast, like Leslie speaker emulating chorus pedal, just when he's comping. So he might play a line and kicks the chorus pedal on for the comping, and then off again. He must go through switches like no one's business, It's such a cool thing. Unfortunately, kind of he's done that now, so it's sort of ruined it for me. Where I get the impression that if I were to start doing that, it'd be that's Osnoy's chorus pedal trick or whatever. But it's such a cool effect. So it sounds like he's being backed up by a Hammond player, playing thirds and sevenths underneath his solo. Okay, so that might be the first thing to do with adding little bits of chords to your melody. So what we're going to look at now is, imagine that we want to actually explicitly spell out the chord changes. So that's going to be the next thing. Your first task here is to play through a 12-bar blues, but just playing the root note of each chord. That's what I want you to do, but not in the bass. So importantly, we're going to avoid playing it in the bass. We're not trying to generate a bass line here. And this might actually highlight how well you know the notes, but let's give it a go. So we're going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4 tonic, 4 chord, 1 chord, 4 chord, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And in this case, we'll just go to the 5, then 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you could even put that into like sort of pentatonic like type lines. Into 4. So there, actually, that was where the first 4 bars were on the 1 chord, whereas previously I've been playing the 1 chord, goes to the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord again. Just different variations on the blues. So you might find that you do that naturally if you're just going to play pentatonic against all 3 chords. You gravitate to accents in the roots. There's the 4 chord. There's the 5 chord. You know, so by accenting the 1, the 4, or the 5, might be a good step here where we're not actually changing the scale, but we're just changing like the kind of the emphasis points within it. Okay, but things start to get really interesting when we start adding certain intervals. You know, arpeggios are great, but they don't sound super bluesy if you play them like this. You know, that doesn't sound like the blues to me. It sounds like an exercise. Okay, whereas if I go, that's much more bluesy, but it's based around the same kind of information. So how do we access that sound? Well, one thing that we can do is this. We might set up a little exercise where we play the roots and then the major third. I'm going to employ a little blues characteristic, a little kind of quirk of blues where we go minor to major. From the minor to major, minor third to major. So I can put the major third above or below. Or, okay. So the 1 chord could be this. Okay, the 4 chord could be this. B flat, yeah? And the B flat again. The F would be. Obviously do this all over the guitar. Okay, so now if I put that into the progression, I'll put this kind of groove. 2, 3, 4. Chords, yeah. Okay, so that's just root and third. Okay, now you might just even embed a little bit of that into pentatonic. Just the 5 and the 4. Or we maybe go a step further. Let's now go, instead of going root to third, let's go root 7th. Or, because the 7th can be below or above. It's just rooting 7th for each of the 3 chords. Okay, in the progression, 3, 4. Okay, then we're going to go root 3rd, 7th. Follow it? Then we can do away with the root and we end up with, or depending on which direction we go. those into your lines. Beginning to hear the harmony here. Now, of course, couple that up with the first thing we looked at, yeah. And you've got this kind of like mixture of ideas that you can use when you play the blues. So, of course, I'm not suggesting that it's not a good idea to explicitly be able to outline each of the notes of a chord, but that tends to sound a little bit more sort of jazzy when you do that, and that's great, and of course that's cool too, and that's something that we could look at in future weeks, playing strings of eighth notes that explicitly follow the harmony. But I think all of these things are available to you. And you should see them as kind of add-ons rather than as replacements. If you find a new way or a kind of a different way of doing things, just add it to your arsenal of ideas, rather than thinking, okay, well, this is how I now play blues. It's just, for me, I don't even think about these approaches when I play now, to be fair. Most of the time, it just comes out naturally, and that's what we're aiming for, I think. But for that to happen, you've got to live with them for a little while. So, have a little bit of fun with this. What's great about this kind of way of playing is you don't necessarily need to resort to things like backing tracks. If I could go, let's play a blues, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. It's complete, we don't necessarily need to have to play along with anything. And it's particularly useful if you're playing in a situation where there's no harmony. I find I tend to use more of these like chord stabs if it's just me and a bass player. Of course, if you've got a piano player and you're doing that, then maybe you're sort of making him a little bit redundant. So you have to be a little bit careful as to what else is happening on the bandstand. If that's the case, then maybe single notes is the way to go forward. Or you can divide it up to various tunes, or different choruses. You might play one chorus where you don't play any chords at all, and then the next chorus it's full of them. It's variety, and having options at your disposal is the order of the day here. So I hope you find something within this section that's of some use. We'll round things off today with a short 2-5-1 D minor lick that's not too dissimilar to something that I played in Anouman at the start of today's session. So here's how it goes, right? So I'll play it really slow to begin with. So it's a 2-5-1 minor lick. Starts with E minor 7 flat 5. So, and the rhythm goes 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's coming in on the and 2. So there's E minor 7 flat 5. Forgive me. It goes 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that's based around an E minor 7 flat 5 chord, but creating a melodic line just by arpeggiating the chord. Then we go to a 13 flat 9 chord. Now usually these things don't work too well in a minor situation because of this note, which you kind of find it in the 2 chord as well. If we have the F sharp note in there, it's sort of implying that this is going to go to major. But what we can do, one of the ways that we can use this chord in a minor situation, so that's the major third of the destination chord, in this case D. So, or it's the 6th of the A. So generally speaking, things that have a natural 6th, like Mixolydian has got a natural 6th, they tend to want to resolve to major. Whereas things that don't have a natural sixth, they can kind of go either way, but they certainly don't sound too. That doesn't sound like it really wants to go to minor. So what we can do is we can kind of do a two-step approach. We go with the sixth without the major sixth. So we go minor, major of D, minor of D, and then D. So major sixth of A, flat sixth or raised five of A, and then that resolves to something in our D chord. So we can do this. Also, that can be placed against the 2 chord to give us that minor 7 flat 5, but with a natural second. That sound. And then it will work in a minor scenario. So that's how you can get things like, which would generally, if you play, generally wants to go to major, but in our line here, it goes to minor. Okay, so we have 2, 5, 13 flat 9. Remember we said about the melody surrounding the chords, so we go. It's coming from the chord. Then I go to A7, raise sharp 5, and then I play a melody that comes from that chord. I go to D minor, I play a melody that comes from D minor. So that's kind of like melodic minor, then Dorian, then back to melodic minor. So it's kind of a melodic minor, Dorian type thing here. So that means I can play the major 7, and then the minor 7, back to major 7, 6 underneath it there. So real slow. And what I like to do with this idea is let the notes ring into one another. So rather than being like a kind of a distinct and separate, let them bleed. It's a choice, you know. So 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and there we have it. Hey presto. So we've reached the end of week 16. I've already got some great topics for next week. So thanks, guys. So I would like to thank Jordan and Darren and Matt for their questions that inspired the topics for this week. Next week, I'm going to take a look. I'm going to play solid body guitar and take a look at some more kind of faster stuff, single note line stuff, because I had 2 requests based around sort of how players like Holdsworth and Alan Hines get that sort of fluid, chromatic, legato-y sound. So that's something that we're going to take a look at. We'll complete our study from last week of 10 different ways to frame that melody. We looked at 1 to 5 in week 15. So we skipped that this week, but next week we'll come back to that. So I hope that you survive in lockdown and that things are beginning to get back to normal for you. I've actually started getting some gigs in. Gigs have been coming in the diary, which is I don't really know what to do. Yeah, I've forgotten how to do them. And I'm always slightly worried on the way there that I've forgotten something, because you kind of get into a way of working where everything's just automatic and you know where everything is. And I'm having to really think about stuff when I play now. But it's great to be out playing live again, and hopefully there'll be more of it, and it'll be great to catch up with some of you guys at a gig at some point. So yeah, keep the questions coming, please. Help me out if you can by liking, give me any comments. Always gratefully received. Likes and shares are very helpful as well. And just spread the word. If you think anyone might be interested in this, let them know about it. And by all means, drop me a line. I'm pretty easy to get hold of. So you can either do it via the comments or you can find me on my website. It's just johnwheatcroftguitar.com. Take care. Have a lovely Sunday. Have a great rest of the week if you're watching this later on. All the others are up on YouTube as well, don't forget. So numbers 1 to 15 are up on YouTube. So if you fancy taking a look through some of the archives, as it were, go for it. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you get loads from this. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.